Hey there, everyone. Hope you all are having a great weekend. Welcome to another thrilling episode of Hatter's Chop Shop, late night edition. Finally got the kiddo to sleep. Hope you guys, like I said, hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. It's been a vomit-filled one for for us here, but we're doing all right, and little one's she's sleeping soundly now. Good to see you guys in chat there, Taco and Ultronimus. Yeah, I thought, we'd make a little progress on the old Mercurius and Vayeate tonight, so why not share that and see where we're going with it. Tonight, we're probably going to be working on a little bit of the wiring, so we'll talk about some electronics, some LED setup that we're going to be doing, and then maybe sculpting uh, some parts to address the vertically challenged nature of wing mobile suits. But we'll see what we can get into. We're going to just kind of play it by ear and see what we do. So, on that note, I have made, some progress off stream with this kit, mostly just cleaning up parts, things like that. So, I'll definitely show that to you guys. The more and more I think about it, the more I'm probably going to end up having to paint the entire kit, and I'm not totally opposed to that, but I'll show you guys what we're looking at here in just a moment. But yeah, again, it's been a weekend full of stormy weather and I guess lots of internet drama, which I'm sure is always fun. But we're gonna take a break from all that by hanging out here and playing with our toys. So yeah, without much further ado, let's go ahead and get into our table view here. So the first thing I want to share with you guys is that my experiment with this product, Silinot, and I mentioned this over, during the week and over on Adam's stream, this Silinot product, which is like, kind of smells like toothpaste. It's it's a silicone alternative that can be remelted, which is good because it's not particularly durable. You're probably lucky to get one molded part out of it, but I was able to indeed get a molded part out of it. So here we have the original part that came with this no-grade Vayeate. It is the energy coil there, and then we have the copied part, which I did end up catching some air bubbles in it, but I was able to patch those in with some UV resin, and I don't think you could really even tell if I didn't draw your attention to it. So the idea here is that once we get some LEDs lined up inside of here, we can get this sucker to glow. So the thing about that, though, is, typically I will work with these little nano LEDs. They are pre-wired, and, they're great because you don't need resistors to work with them. They just run off of a little 3-volt power, and that's what you get. It's just a little bright light out of them. And this is just off of a coin battery, just for testing purposes. Oh, come on, there we go. The autofocus was giving me grief there. So these guys are great for, single color applications. I might end up using one of these, like a pink version, because I actually have 10 colors of them. I'll probably end up using a pink version for the faceplate, because the Vayeate has a pink faceplate light. Let's push in a little bit here, see if that helps with the auto focusing issue that we're having here. But I wanted to, tinker with some color changing lights. And so the idea is that I'm going to try and control both the Vayeate and Mercurius from one Seed Studio Xiao ESP32C3. Right there you can see the Xiao ESP32C3. Well, if it'll come back into focus there. So this is just a microcontroller board. I'm going to show you guys how this works. The idea is, obviously we've got all these different little pin locations, and we can use them to do different things. We can actually connect a LiPo battery, like a little lithium ion battery, to these positive and negative terminals, and it will charge that battery via the USB input. So that's pretty cool. Then we've got, 5-volt USB power, the ground out, the 3-volt power, and then we've got all of our data pins. And these data pins are going to be what controls the device. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to cram this into one of the mobile suits just because of, you know, they're older kits. They don't have a lot of room inside them. So what I'm thinking is I'll probably end up putting this inside of an action base somehow and then running wires that connect to the Mercurius and Vayeate through that action base. And then we'll be able to just like, you know, plug it in and it'll turn on, and then we can unplug it when we want the lights to come off. That said, we can use it to control these guys, turn them like on and off, that sort of thing. But we can also do something like this. If you've ever bought one of those cheap little LED light strips, this should look familiar to you because it's just snipped off of one of those LED light strips. And what we can do is we can actually harvest the LED unit in here. Now it's a little tricky to work with because, well, let me show you. This is one that I have harvested off of that strip already, and you can see that I've got it labeled in particular ways here because the way that this one works is it's actually what's called a common anode LED, RGB channel LED. And so it takes 5 volts of power, and we put 5 volts into any of these 3 pins on the bottom, and then the ground or the negative terminal we connect to one of these 3 pins on the top. Now let me show you what that looks like. This will be an interesting, you know, little lesson. So I've got a little 6-volt battery here. It's a little bit more powerful than we need, but you know, the idea is that it's got enough current that it's actually going to get this sucker to light up. So I'm just holding it here, and we're just going to put the positive terminal, or you know, touch this wire to one of the positive terminals down here, and then we can touch the, oh, gotta make sure I've got good contact. There we go. So when we touch the center, we get the red light. When we touch the outside, we get green. Oh, see, now that autofocus is going off, probably because this light is so bright. And then we touch this pin and we get blue. So we can activate the blue, red, or green by simply connecting the negative terminal of that particular light. Now what that means is that if we wanted to get like multiple colored lights, then we can connect and bridge those terminals in order to get like white or orange or purple. And that's how these LED light strips work. So pretty cool, right? And of course we can do the same thing here. You can actually see the light strip is labeled. You've got your 5 volt, and then you've got 3 little pins there. See if I can get that. Yeah, GRB. And so what that does is, like, basically it's just a flexible PCB that connects all of the GR and B pins of every light on the strip. So let's say we'll flip this over. We're going to put 5 volts into the top pin here, and then see if we can't get this light to light up as well. I might be trying to do too much with one hand. Yeah, I might not be able to get this just because the strip is moving on me. Yeah. Well, you get the idea. So this all works well and good if we are trying to control one strip that are all going to light up in the same color, because basically what we would do is we are going to take the 5 volts from the microcontroller, so that's this one, and we're going to run a wire from here to any one of these 3 pins on the bottom, and then we're going to run a wire from the blue to a data pin, from the red to another data pin, and the green to a third data pin. So for each group of lights that is going to light up in the same color, we basically have to set aside 3 pins worth of data, because basically we'll turn it on and say, like, okay, turn on D1 and it'll pull data from D1, etc., etc. So that means that if I wanted to control, say, 3 sets of lights, then I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pins. and it would take up basically the entire board just to control 3 individual lights, I should say. So we are going to have to be judicious about how we manage that, because, like, say for instance, all of the lights that are coming into the Vayeate, we are going to basically have here in this part of the body that I have assembled here, because we're going to have one light in the faceplate. We're going to have a light group in the energy coil that goes in the backpack. And then we are going to have a light that comes down into the beam cannon. Obviously, I've disassembled this for illustrative purposes. So we'll have a light that comes into the beam cannon. We're going to hollow this little section out, and this guy's going to glow yellow. So that means that if I were going to use one of these lights in each of these locations, that I would need 9 pins on there occupied. That's just not going to work for us. So what we're going to end up doing is using a combination of our standard LEDs for whenever we don't need all of that extra power. We can just take one of these 3-volt LEDs, and we're going to connect it to the 3-volt power source and then 1 data pin. And what's cool about that is that if we wire them in parallel, we can actually power as many of these as we want off of just those 2 pins. We don't have to do 1 pin for every single LED, which is great. Same thing with these guys, is it's like, you know, as long as we're lighting all of them the same color, then we can wire them all in parallel. And so basically, if we had like a strip of 10 of these lights, and all of them were going to be blue, red, or green at the same time, then we would only need the 3 to 1, and then the 1 to the power. So hopefully that explains kind of how this sucker is going to work, how we're going to wire him up. I guess the main thing is we need to consider exactly how many of these variable color LEDs we are going to need for this project. And for that, let me go ahead and pull up our little display capture here, because I wanted to get some footage of the Vayeate in action so that we knew exactly what colors we were going to need. So this is from the old series that was on, it used to be on the Gundam Info YouTube channel, but now it's been re-uploaded by some other YouTubers. And so I just want to show off, like, basically it's like this MS illustration series where they kind of go through the different mobile suits from Gundam Wing. So here we have the Vayeate. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that the faceplate is going to be a pink LED. That one's easy because it only ever lights up pink. This is where it gets tricky, is so you see the energy coil on the back actually starts lit up pink, but then it kind of, okay, see, it cut right before we got to, it kind of goes almost full white. So I don't know, I'm open to a suggestion from you guys. You know, do you think it is worth, you know, making the energy coil a color change option, or should I just wire it up with pink lights and call it a day? That's, you know, leave that up to the class. Now the other light here, so obviously, yeah, the pink faceplate, that's going to cover that, no problem. And then the final light is basically just going to be yellow, because the cannon only ever glows in yellow. And there you go. So obviously we have some different, you know, we're going to have some different lighting effects that we have to worry about with the Mercurius, which, let me switch back to the table view here. So with this old school no grade Mercurius, we're going to have to figure out exactly how we're going to split up the different shield plates and create a flexible method of, you know, tethering these guys together and maybe putting some kind of, you know, do we do some like filament LEDs? I don't know. We're gonna have to figure out something to do with these guys, but that is for another day. As for the Vayeate, you know, like I said, as far as from a wiring perspective, this one's actually going to be a lot easier, because it seems like the colors are straightforward and everything is contained within these walls. This is the energy pipe, I say in quotes, that used to connect the backpack to the gun. But I mean, A, it's just a piece of plastic, so yeah, that's what I think of that. I'm kidding. We'll harvest that for something else. But B, we could just as easily take like a USB cable. I'm not going to do this one because this is one of my few USB-C cables. But, we're going to take a USB cable like this and we're basically just going to replace the existing cable with that. And then you know, it practically wires itself. So that's cool. So I figured we could experiment with one of those things this evening here. So let me check out what you guys have got. So going all Tim Ray device seems good. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if the AI powered Vayeate will live up to expectations. Taco saying this is way over my head. I am still working on sanding panel lines and seam lines. Well, the good news is I'm terrible at those. See, I have channeled all of my energy into this electronic stuff, so And then 16 times a second says dimmer slash gradient switch maybe. Yeah, we're definitely going to do that. And that is all going to be controlled in software here, which when we get to that stage, I'm going to pull up the code editor and show you guys how we do that. And so, yeah, I mean, this is such a powerful device. Not only can we set up a program to run, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how we're going to connect it to an app on my phone, and I'm going to be able to control the Mercurius and Vayeate through sliders and buttons on my phone, which, everything is Bluetooth powered. So this is going to be like, I can't tell you guys how excited I am. Ultron says, I lean to pink with the white being just an ambient glow naturally. I'm glad you mentioned that because I considered maybe painting with a little bit of this. This is a neutral white glow powder. It is a pigment additive, and I've shown this on stream before, but you take a little bit of UV light, you get it all warmed up, and you can already see it's kind of starting to kick off here. I've noticed that it doesn't hold its glow quite as well as it used to, but well, I guess you can't see it when it yeah, I've got too many lights on over here. But the idea is that this stuff, it does glow for a little bit. So we could indeed paint this with a little bit of that, and we'd have something close to that effect. But yeah, I'm thinking that what our best option is going to be is to run several LEDs along the inside of this and light it up from the inside. The first thing I want to do though is get a little bit of paint on it so that I know exactly where the what's going to be covered. I'm actually I encountered something that I wasn't planning on when I was just watching that video here. Let me pull that back up. So if we come back to that illustration of the Vayeate's backpack, I thought that oh good, you can see my mouse cursor here. I thought that the band that goes through the center was black and that it was not lit up, but evidently it is lit up. So that presents an additional challenge that we're going to have to worry about here, which means the only things that I'm going to get to paint black are the center of the actual part. So that means this is going to get painted black, and then I can paint like in between here black, but then everything else has to stay clear so that we can have the light shine through it, which is going to be a little challenging. Now let me see if I've got... The question is, will we have enough lights? Well, we definitely have enough white and gold. Let's see what else we've got here. I'm not sure what's in here, but I'm sure that there's something we can use. Well, we'll just have to figure it out. Yeah, I wonder if I don't have any pink lights available because I might have used them all. Oh yes, Hasaki, this is the no-grade Vayeate, and we have the no-grade Mercurius here as well, but we have not taken it apart. Clearly, this is an old, from the dark times of Hatter Gunpla building when nub marks were a thing of pride. And yeah, they did release P Bandai versions. I think mostly because they had the P Bandai like Suivant versions. But I think that these are going to work better for what we're doing here because, we can, because they have so much room on the inside to play around with. And actually, the Mercurius is going to illustrate what I'd like to do with the wastes because, currently the Vayeate is in a state of disrepair. But the way that these guys are connected is basically just a polycap in the torso. Oh, let me clear that chat there. So we've got a polycap in the torso and a peg in the waist that basically holds this thing together. And I mean, obviously this one has like the nub marks in the way, but it does create this rather ugly gap in there. So what I'm thinking, and this one's been sanded down, but even still, it's not a smooth, it's definitely not as smooth as it could be. Oh yeah, it's like catching on there. So what I'm thinking is either A, and I'll take suggestions on what you guys prefer. Either A, I will cut along the waistline of the mobile suit, separate the upper and lower torso, and then basically create like a socket for it to operate in, or we're just going to widen this hole and basically create like a tiny torso out of pla plate that will sit underneath it. And then that way, even if this is moving kind of off the waist, there's still going to be like a little machine part in there that makes it look a little bit more realistic. I think either option's going to end up looking good, but just something to think about. So yeah, let's see if I've definitely got plot plate handy, so we're going to set that to the side. And then as far as my electronic components, I didn't realize I was going to need so many pink lights, so I guess I'm going to need to try and fish a bunch out. Because we're going to need to run pink lights, I guess, around the inside of this guy. Alright, give me just a hot sec. Wait a second. I think I spoke too soon. I might have found the pink lights. Nope, these are green. Let's see if we can find the pink lights. Where are the pink lights? Oh my gosh, the state of my desk. They're not in here, are they? Now, of course, these are always another fun option. I might use one of these for the inside of the beam cannon. All right, give me just a second. We're going to see if I can come up with those pink lights. Look at that. All I had to do was step away for 2 seconds, and the pink lights decided to show themselves. So in here, we've got, looks like 10, maybe 20 of these lights. We're just going to pull them all out. And of course, you can buy these lights in like, packs of like 1,000. Now this is the only trouble with these pink ones, is that they tend to be uh, a little dimmer. Let's see. Man, can you even see that? Maybe if it's inside here. So it might end up being that we need to this'll be a dangerous experiment that I'm gonna do here on camera for you guys. Is if we try the old 6-volt. Now this will decrease the lifespan of the battery, but man, tell me that's not the brightness that we want. So we might end up just running 5 volts through these, and it's just gonna be what it is. So the first thing we are going to need to do is create the channels for these lights to go through, because there's these kind of like they're like support bars that go through the center of the energy coil. You're gonna hear me make up a lot of these terms because I don't know what the technical terms for some of these things are. And what's interesting about this resin that I used is it's actually got some flex to it. It's a little pliable, which I think is a good thing. I don't know about you guys, but like when you buy resin conversion kits and like resin parts for your Gunpla, like I can't stand when they are these like super brittle, you have to handle them with kid gloves kind of thing. It's like, especially for the amount that you pay for some of these resin conversion parts, like, come on, you expect at least the quality that you would get from a Gunpla, and you can handle Gunpla pretty, rough. Like you don't have to be super delicate with Gunpla. So, yeah, just something to consider. I am definitely trying to work on my own blend um, of 3D print resins, because obviously I want the rigidity of like a standard UV resin, but I also want, a little bit of pliability to it. So, mixing in some of that rubber-like 3D print resin is a good way of adding durability, because it adds a certain amount of flex. Now, obviously, as with everything, it comes with some trade-offs. The uh, the most obvious of which is that you are going to need more supports when you're 3D printing, which means more material is consumed. And you are going to need to have longer print times, which means, longer exposure per layer, which means longer print times. So, but I think it's a fair trade. So I think that somewhere around the 30% rubber-like resin plus 70% standard. Well, I say standard, but it's more like the ABS, like the tough resin that we're going to be using to try and get that added durability. But I've not run enough experiments with it yet. So let's see. Do I have a little? I might just end up having to like paint off of a piece of paper or something, which I'm not above doing, but let's set our lights to the side here. The idea is that I want this to be as close to the final representation of this part as we can get, which means getting it somewhat painted. And I'm going to mention this in my review of the Sillinaut, but you probably can tell. So first of all, I already put some ink on here, so there's a little bit of black smudging on there, but that's not the big deal. There is like a bluish tint. You probably can't see it too well on the camera, but there's a bluish tint that came off of the blue rubber into the resin. Because the resin that I used was this stuff, Shabebe. Which is a obviously crystal clear resin. because it was cheap, I assume that it's going to start to turn yellow over time, but it definitely never turns blue. That is something that came off of the mold, so just something to consider. All right, don't go all electro boom. Yeah, that's I exposed my wife to Electro Boom recently because obviously the similarities between he and I are um they're there. I at least try to keep it PG when I'm electrocuting myself or burning myself. Actually, this evening I've got to be careful with this because I've got my this is a hot air rework station. I currently have it set to 230 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to be what we need to melt this stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear that faint whirring or buzzing going on in the back. It's the fan from the hot air rework station. So this is solder paste. I have since learned from doing a lot of soldering on these tiny LEDs that I suck at it. So now I use this really fine tip, and I'm keeping it in this plastic bag so that it doesn't, go bad on me. But I use this very fine tip to apply, just a little bit of solder paste on the, small components of these boards and stuff, and then just hit it with the hot air. It's so much cleaner, and it actually looks good. So, because I've botched so many solder jobs that it's not even funny. So, let's get a little bit of thinner on my brush. And I think I mentioned at the start of this project that that I am going to hand paint everything on it that is painted. So that is one of the major challenges that I'm working with. So we've got a nice thinned out paint here. And I have a feeling that this is going to take like 1,000 coats of paint because, it's clear and we're working with acrylics here. Do just a little bit like that to start. We've got to get in here on the outsides. And this is tough because it's like, this means that all my wiring is going to be exposed and stuff. So like, I'm debating, what do you guys think? Should I just go ahead and paint this little bar black and just have it so that the outside edges of the coil light up? It's going to be so much easier for me in the long run, but is that taking the coward's way out? Maybe, probably. I will settle for, 65% anime accuracy. I ordered potentiometers for my base. Oh, yeah, here we go. So 16 times a second. I ordered potentiometers for my base, but need a capacitor for the tone pot. Have to wire it up myself. Good luck with that, man. I did the same thing with the Telecaster that you frequently see in the background here. It has a coil tap in it so that we can switch between the humbuckers and the single coil pickups. And that was the first solder job that I ever did, was on that. So I think that that's a good first project when it comes to soldering, is working on guitars. It's a very expensive first project, but at least it's a lot harder to ruin that than something at this scale, because you're definitely not going to bridge any connections by accident. Okay. And then, would painting it in help it glow in any way? No, not necessarily. It's going to help me hide the wires better. That's about it. So let's get in here with a finer tip brush for the little channels in here. Okay. Now it looks like this first layer's dried a little bit. So what I'm going to do is paint against the grain. So like this is a little acrylic painting tip for you guys. So like I don't know if you can see with the amount of blur that's going on here, but so you see how like the grain is going this way, right? So on our second pass, our second coat, we're going to go against that, and then the paint can catch in all of those little spaces and fill it in. So same deal here. We're going to go against the grain on the second pass. And then here is this way. So we're going to go against the grain that way. Ultronus says, could you make the wires being visible a feature, like having them exposed? I mean, man, that's a good question. Obviously, it's going to be kind of a feature for the beam cannon portion because technically the wires are going to be exposed in that they are going from the backpack to the they're going to be going from the backpack to the gun, so you'll be able to see that, which is kind of cool. And then like, so this is interesting. So this is the part that fits over the backpack. I think it actually goes this way. So like, how much of this is going to be exposed? These, oh, so these right here used to have a yellow sticker on them, which is interesting because it's like you can still see the yellow. Let me show this off again. So if we go back into that, so this is really interesting to me because you can still see that there's yellow on the outside of the backpack, even though the inside is lit up pink. So that's kind of an interesting detail. So I guess I'm just gonna have to paint those yellow on the backpack. Now, let's see how many of these we're probably gonna need to light this sucker up. I'm thinking one, maybe two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Yeah, so three here. Oh, sorry, I don't know if that was in frame. So one, two, three, and then one down here, and then one, two, three, and one down here. And then the idea is I'm gonna try and angle them so that they face outward. So let's see. So the problem is that the light doesn't diffuse very well on these. So they're going to create these like hot spots, right? And we want to avoid that if we can, right? So we have a couple of options. We can um we can obviously add more lights. That will reduce the number of hot spots in there. Um or we can find some way to kind of diffuse the light somehow, because it being clear doesn't really doesn't really help with that. So what do you guys think? Now if I go back to the tape, I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to keep bouncing back and forth. If we go back to the tape, it's black to start, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's black inside. Like, it could be clear for all we know. Like, that could be clear, and it just like my part. If we hop back into the table view, oh man, I was trying to have it lined up. So yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that being lined up like that, it just looks like it's black, but it's actually the same, same deal that we've got going on here. So we can do that, or we can try and paint this in with something to help diffuse that light. We can do something like this, do a little fluorescent glow paint, which obviously will heat up under black light. But I'm trying to avoid using the black light trick. I want to definitely do as much in, LEDs as we can. At least for this project, because this is supposed to be my magnum opus of LEDs, at least until we start with the Zeta Plus Hummingbird, which I'm going to be able to cram so many LEDs into that thing. I'm so excited. Yeah, you know what, guys? I think I'm just going to go for it. I am going to paint I'm just going to paint that bar black so that it allows us a way of hiding the wires in plain sight. And it will prevent there from being any hot spots, because technically the light itself will be behind black paint. Whereas the way it is now, you'll be able to see that hot spot. Let's see. What's going on, Robert? Who has seen that new anime about mechanical arms, Mecha Ude? Not I. But then I tend to be a little bit out of the loop when it comes to anime that isn't Gundam. I'm going to be 100% honest about that. I always say that I'm not really an anime fan. I am just a Gundam fan. But even that is kind of a lie, because it's like, obviously I've seen all of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT and all that stuff. So it's like I watch other anime, but, I'm not like I don't get excited over just any anime. It's got to be something that grabs me. Oh, Crimson Gamer, what kind of paint am I using? Trick of the trade, I am using Deco Art Crafters acrylic. The trick, of course, is that you can really use any paint as long as you thin it well enough and you use the right techniques, I've found. This paint, when it dries, it tends to have a little bit more of like a matte texture, but I've been able to avoid getting any brush marks, brush strokes, I should say. So like right now, you can see a lot of the brush strokes because it's still pretty wet, but when it dries, it's just gonna have this matte finish to it. So, and that's what we like around here. We like a matte finish acrylic paint. I'm actually putting together, and this isn't necessarily for me, but it's, for someone else. I'm putting together a guide of Gunpla paints. Not necessarily like recommendations for specific products, but it's really more of just a guide for what paints are compatible with what types of thinners and then what you can paint over them. Because, you know, between myself and other people on the Discord and stuff, I've heard far too many horror stories of like, oh, I had this one kit painted and then I went to use like, panel line fluid on it and it melted my paint and, all this stuff. And it's like, or worse, it's like you use a special top coat and then the top coat gets melted. And so basically I want to create like a little handy guide that says, hey, here are your different paint types and here's what you can use on top of them without fear of ruining them. So for instance, if you're going to use acrylic, put acrylic down first. The You can use like, especially after the acrylic paints have cured, you can pretty much use either enamels or lacquers on top of them without fear of like melting the acrylic. So yeah, that is the look we are going for. Now let me grab one of my test lights here, because this is the idea behind it, right? Here we've got a plain yellow light. Man, I'm going to need a lot more black paint if we're going to need to hide those hot spots of light. Either that or maybe I can turn the light out. So if the light is facing, away from the front of the panel here, let me get in on this so we can actually get some focus. It drives me nuts when the camera goes out of focus like that. So, if we have the light facing kind of outward this way, you can definitely see the hot spot a little bit more. Whereas if we turn it out and face it towards the back of the backpack, it's really more of like an ambient glow. And that's the kind of look that we're going for, is the ambient glow. So it is going to take a lot more a lot more. It is going to take a few more layers of, the black paint over here so that we can kind of obscure the light that's coming through. I'm tempted to paint in the backside, but I don't think that's going to work, actually. I think all of the paint has to be applied to the front, unfortunately, in this particular instance. Just the nature of the clear part. If I try to paint the backside, I'm worried I'm just going to fill the whole thing in black and nothing's going to show. Oh, hey, what's going on, Adam? Good to see you in chat here. Uh, Also, try making. Oh, yeah, sorry, I missed that here. Let's see. You'd be missing out then. Also, try making a waifu kit melded with a centaur mecha body. Like the waist up is a human girl and below is a mecha horse. That'd be interesting. I do have that old high grade Funsaiki from um, from G Gundam. So technically I do already have a horse body. And I haven't built it yet. It's still in the backlog, but I have uh the P Bandai Super Fumina Titans made. So I do have a waifu kit that I've not built yet. But I was gonna turn her more into like a Zeta girl. You know, because it's me. and it is my job to turn everything into a Zeta. Whoa. I keep like elbowing my paintbrushes over here and messing myself up. Okay, let's just set you over here if you're gonna be like this. I really need to have like a handier paint station because this is not conducive to a good painting environment. And we're just going to keep going the opposite direction of whichever direction we painted with the last coat on these passes of paint. See, I wonder if this might have actually been a job for enamel paints because then I could probably get away with just like one coat. One really good coat of enamel paints would either that or I need to invest in some of that black 2.0, the trademarked black that absorbs 99 point however much percent of ambient light. That would be interesting to use in conjunction with LEDs, honestly. All right. Let's let that layer dry for just a second. And then we're going to think about how we're going to wire up this backpack. Oh, you know what? I have a great idea for how to do that. Here we've got some paper, and we've got the non resin copy version here. And what we're going to do is, if I can find a pen, we're going to trace this sucker and see exactly what we're working with. Okay. Okay. All right. So here is our backpack. I guess we can add in this part down here. Maybe if I can get it without catching my finger. There we go. So the idea is we're going to put one LED here, one here, and then there's the gap, right? So we've got the little gap that we have to skip over. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And with our LEDs placed here, we can actually kind of map out how we're going to wire this sucker. 2. 1. Oh, let's get this a little. 2. Let's see. 3 and 4. And 3 and 4. Now we're going to have a ton of excess wire here that we have to cut off. So the idea is we're going to try and cut them in a very tactical way so as to maximize the amount of wire stretch that we can get out of these. Because obviously it's like, you know, if the wires are all going to end up right here, we don't need like this length to be the same as those. So let's do that. Gonna grab just a wee bit of masking tape. And we're going to take our first light and tape it into place here. We'll take our second light and tape it into place here. And what we're going to do is obviously tape the wire down as well, because, you know, it's not as the crow flies. It's like these wires are going to be kind of layered on top of each other, running through the inside of the coil. So we have to make sure that we have that extra length of wire accounted for. Our third light is going to be right here. And the fourth light is going to be right here. So despite what I said earlier, Ultronimus, you might be onto something, because it looks like keeping these wires from being exposed is going to be a lot more challenging than I imagined. Especially down here towards the bottom. Like, you know, we're going to have like this sprawling chunk of wires coming out. So the idea is, you know, we can just cut like down here and keep them all the same length, or at least the length that they need to be in order to run the length of the coil. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to give it like, let's give it just a little bit more than that. And of course, waste not, want not. I'm going to save all of these because this wire is like gold to me. These like itty bitty fine wires are so perfect for Gunpla applications that I have reused them for literally everything. Like every time I use one of these LEDs, if I have to cut any portion of wire, I will save it because it's worthwhile. And to the same end, we are going to do the same exercise with these ones. Obviously, we're doing, you know, we're not getting like super technical and accurate with our measurements. We're just kind of eyeballing it because it really doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. So there we go. That is going to be all of the lights running into our Vayeate backpack. It's actually kind of nice to have them on this card all organized. Oh, here we go. Hey, what's going on, Antonio? I haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're doing all right. Don't know the names of the LEDs, but why don't you use the string LEDs that people use to make lightsabers or storefront signs? Well, so like, for instance, I do have some of these little guys, if I can find one. Oh, well, I suppose I can show this guy. So the way these guys work, unfortunately, this is kind of a rigid, it doesn't bend, but the light on this actually is pretty powerful. Let me see if I can find one of my wires. So let's see. This is the positive end. So I might end up using one of these for the inside of the beam rifle because that is pretty, that's brighter than everything else that I'm working with here. Now, if you're talking about like EL wire, I do have some of that handy. Like one of these guys. Now, the EL wire is nifty, but unfortunately, it requires one of these inverters to work, which I guess isn't the worst thing. We could technically use this guy because it's going to be wired into the action base. So this device here takes the direct current that comes from a battery and then turns it into alternating current, like what would come out of your wall. And that is what is required for these flexible EL wires. But what's nifty about these is that you don't have to connect both ends to the terminal on the end. So like you can connect them to one end and the entire end will light up even if the other end is cut. So it's really awesome for making things like lightsabers, if you can find a way to keep it rigid, because unfortunately they are not rigid on their own. They're really flexible. So, but yes, that is a good idea, utilizing something like that. Who thinks Steven should turn Kigali into a centaur waifu with when Psyche's I don't know. That's a good question. I have never made a centaur before. But I guess if I was going to, it might as well be Lacus. Oop. So we're just stripping off the little ends of these wires. Oh, there we go. The delicate process of stripping off the ends of these wires. And this one. And then we're actually going to use this little bit of silicone. Now this is not the silly knot. This is like legit silicone from a scrapped mold that I used before. So it is not going to melt under the heat of my rework station, which is going to be important. So we've got our little putty syringe here. I'm just going to get that primed and ready to go. And while we're doing this, let's go ahead and apply another coat of paint to this guy. This is why I like having lots of things to do, is that, while I'm waiting on paint to dry, I don't just have to sit here and watch it. I can I can do some wiring while we're at it. Now, the next thing I'm going to have to think about, because I'm always planning like 2, 3 steps ahead, right? Or at least trying to, is what am I going to make as the new faceplate of the Vayeate? So, like, obviously, I could make a resin copy replacement of this energy coil because I can just make a copy of it. But with the faceplate, I actually had to just carve out a hole in the existing face, and there's nothing really there to make a copy of. So, do I take a piece of, like, maybe like recycle a piece of a blister pack from something? Like, for instance, if I were to, if I've got some of these coin battery packages, and you know how they have like the paper, like the cardboard in the back, and then they have the plastic over the top of them. I could cut out a little piece of that blister pack and make it into a mask or the faceplate for the V8, or I could try putting a little dab of UV resin in the faceplate and curing it, and that would be like a clear thing. So I don't know. There's a lot of options here to consider when it comes to how we're going to make the final version of this guy. And then of course anything that works here, we can of course use for the Mercurius as well. Like I said, I'm really racking my brain over how we're going to get the Mercurius shield bits to work. So there we go. Got this guy nice and gooped up. Now we're going to strip a few more wires here. Where did I put my wire cutter? I'm breaking the #1 rule of Gunpla, guys. My desk is an absolute disaster. I'm actually impressed that that worked. I thought I was going to clip the wires there because it is really hard to strip 2 wires in one go. There we go. All right. Looks like we've got all of our wires stripped and ready. And now, here's where the magic happens. So I'm just going to put down a little dab of this stuff. Oh gosh. There I go, making a mess again. Uh-oh. Hope it didn't like cure in the tip there. Let's see if I can loosen it up here. All right, we should be okay here. I just don't want to squirt out a whole bunch. Okay, I think I finally got some motion here. Maybe I need to swap the tip out here. I mean, it seems to be working. Let's see. All right, let's try to just unscrew the tip here. Yeah, I think I just have the tip is a little clogged on this. Let's see if I've got something I can kind of loosen that up with. Um, It's like I really don't want anything that's really. This is about as thick of a. There we go. All right. Let's see if that helped loosen things up a little bit. There we go. So that is really. Might do a little more. That is all we are going to use. And then the real trick is going to be how are we going to keep all of these wires together and yet separate, because we don't want to. We only want the positive leads and the negative leads. So we'll kind of bunch them all together like this. Kind of bend these up and out of the way while we work on the reds. Okay. And now you guys are going to get to see the magic of the hot air doing its thing. God, if I can get it to be just a little bit more of a fine point. And then hold it in place with some tweezers, if we can. We'll see how it works. Because I'm not trying to burn myself again. Oh, lost one there. Okay. So okay, getting a little hot on my finger. Looks like it dabbed up a little bit on the here. I might have a better idea for how to do this. here is our soldering station, which, hey, by the way, this is the lighting setup for the uh, Ilfrith pre-production type. Very, very delicate wiring job indeed, as you can see. Same sort of deal, though. Typical of me. So let's see if we can't do this instead. If we take all of our positive leads here, I'm try and twist them up into a bunch. And then we can take our little solder paste and just apply it to the bunch. Let's see if you guys can see that. Oh, here we go. I see a tag here from Robert. Gotta go for now, but before I leave, how about an answer to my centaur prosthesis question for those who have no lower body parts below their waists? Oh, I don't know. That's a good question, to be honest with you. You know, there's benefits and drawbacks to the four-legged animal, right? Because obviously, um, Native Americans, when they would hunt deer and elk and things, they would chase them because two-legged animals can run for a longer period of time than four-legged ones. So even though you're faster with four legs, you are at a disadvantage. So it would be worth considering, what's more important to you, getting there faster or having, being able to run for longer distances without fatigue. Is that a non-answer? It feels like a cop-out. But I think that there's something to be said there. Is that two legs might be the way to go, despite the apparent benefit of four. So the idea is that we need to solder these all together so that when we do connect them to our power source, they are all powered equally and at the same time. There you go, Ultronymous. Who needs legs? Snakes get by just fine. Okay, so there we've got our paste applied. A little sloppily, but you know what? We do what we can. Let's get that back into frame. And then you guys will finally get to see the magic of this wonderful hot air rework station doing its thing. So you can already see that, like, well, of course, the typical autofocus not working for me here. There we go. So even with just a little bit of heat applied, the paste has kind of like globbed together there. You're going to see it turn silver though, and that's when we know that it's actually bonding. Nope. Nope. Oh, I just don't want this one rogue wire getting away. Come on. Maybe I do not have the heat on this guy turned up high enough. Let's bump up the heat on that. So it's like some of the wires bonded, but not all of them. So let's see if we can't get these guys to play nicely with each other. As you can see, a lot of the paste melted, but it didn't quite get to that like liquid form where it starts to work its real magic and bond together. I see the camera trying to focus here. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Focus on those little wires for me. Wow. So this is like 10 degrees hotter. Man, this really doesn't want to melt for me tonight. Let's take a look and see how many are actually fused together at this point. So it looks like 3 of them, but not all 8. Yes, indeed, Urban Tech Bro. We are adding some LEDs to this kit that is proven to be a little more difficult than I would have imagined. So let's go ahead and we're just going to crank the temp on this so that it is way hotter. And then really slather this guy in our solder paste. Because once this stuff gets to flowing, it's going to work. All right. And while that is heating up, I think it's time we can add another coat of paint to our energy coil here. What I really wish that I had handy is some of that future for floor polish to add as a leveler to my acrylic paint here. Maybe I'll make a trip up to Home Depot tomorrow and get some of our floor cleaner, as I'm going to need a lot more of it to paint the rest of the kit after this. Once we get this done, we'll check if the hot air gun is up to temp yet. Yeah. That'll do for now. Let's see if we've got enough solder paste on this guy yet to where these suckers will fuse together. There we go. Now, did you see how, like, immediately that turned to, like, liquid? That is much more promising than we've had so far. We're just going to try not to set this sheet of paper that they're on fire. There we go. See if we can blow that bead upward. Maybe hit it from this side. this doesn't work, I might just switch back to traditional soldering just for this part. Because this is starting to get annoying. Well, the wire's still warm. That's a good sign. Let's take this guy down. Oop. Caught on the camera wire. That looks like a solid joint. So let's try to take this off. Where's my... So we've got our template has done its job holding the wires in place for us while we connected at least half of the edges. Oh, yeah, see, a few of the stragglers came off. So then let's see, where's my fat battery? Because this is the guy that we're going to want to use for these. Yeah, this is going to work. So, with that in mind, we can try to start placing some of these lights in here. This is something that I'd like to at least achieve tonight, is getting a few of the lights in. Maybe we can just solder them after the fact. So the longest one is going to be the one that goes up here. Oh, and again, the idea is I'm going to be facing them. I'm going to be facing them towards the back so that we get a nice faint glow and there's not going to be any hot spots there. I'm just going to test this one more time because I'm not quite convinced that we have enough paint on here to prevent the faint glow. So, yeah, I think the idea is going to be to have them face outward. And who knows, maybe what I can do is seal them up using some of this UV resin, and then that will ensure that they play nicely. It might help diffuse the light is what is the word I'm looking for. But the thing that I'm not sure about is that when I've worked with these lights in the past, I've found that I've accidentally shorted them when I've applied some of this UV resin. So let's use a sacrificial light. We've got this guy. Where's my coin battery that I was using? Oh, there it is. So we've got this light, which is a yellow one. Or it's white, but still in working order. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to test whether or not applying UV resin and curing it on the back side of the light is going to short it out and make it useless. Because if I do this with the actual light, then we are going to be up a creek. So, we've applied our UV resin. I've got my UV light that we're applying to cure it up. It shouldn't really make a difference. Because as long as the wires aren't touching each other, you know, it's like, what difference does it make? But you never know with these things. Um, when I did a resin pour project, which this was like my first experiment with using some of the filament style lights, I had everything working perfectly. It was this miniature ZGOC and GM that were going to be underwater because it was a resin, you know, it was like supposed to be resin underwater diorama thing. And what happened was, as soon as I mixed up the resin, poured it in, cured it, the LEDs stopped working. So the entire point of the diorama failed. So I'm a little gun shy about doing this again. Um, Still not quite cured. But yeah, who knows if that was just because it was a poor connection versus if it were because of the resin. And this LED light is dying on me, so I'm gonna need to get some new batteries in it if I continue to use the UV resin. So let's see. Looks like it's cured now. Okay. So the light still works even when soaked in resin. That is a good sign. That makes me feel encouraged to do this. We are going to place our LED down. What kind of batteries does this guy take anyway? Let's see if I've got any handy here. Some AAAs. I don't have any AAAs handy at my desk here, so we are going to have to come up with something else to do in the meantime. Give me just a minute, and I'm going to grab, since we're not going to need this guy anymore, we're going to clear that, make sure that it's cooled off, and then I've got my bigger UV light that actually plugs into the wall. So I'm going to grab that real quick so that I've got it, and we can, you know, cure this sucker up. All right, I am back, and this thing is still cooling down. That's crazy. So here is our big industrial blacklight LED. I'm going to plug this thing into the wall here. Because typically I use this for actual Gunpla photography instead of just curing resin. But tonight it's going to be doing a little overkill for us. Let's get our paints out of the way. Let's see what we can do here. All right. Yeah, you can see this thing is pretty powerful. I don't even have it like anywhere close to the desk, but it is still lighting everything up. So, oh yeah, you can see like the weird. It's like, if you guys ever done that like cosmic bowling. I guess you don't really get the effect as much on camera, but man, my entire desk has like all these little flecks of uh, the phosphorescent paint that are lit up by the UV light. So I do need to clear out some little spaces here in the part, because there's like some spots where like the resin pooled up during the molding process, and we don't want those to interfere with where the lights are going to go. So like right here, basically just trying to like carve a channel out for the light to go in. All right. So the first one is going to go right here. I think what the best course of action is going to be is to have that laid down like that. Then I will, with my left hand, hold the light where it needs to go, and with my right hand apply the UV resin, or yeah, apply the UV resin so that it sticks in place. It's like a mad juggling game here. Okay. So obviously globbed way too much in there, but you know. Once this hardens in place, we will test out the light and make sure that the circuit is still good. Like I said, I've been gun shy about doing this. Wonder, do I have a toothpick or something I can kind of prod it down with? Man, this light doesn't mess around, because this thing is like already super hardened. Which, don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, but all right, and it still lights up. Good sign. It's not perfectly straight in there, but I guess it doesn't really matter because you're only going to see this side. And so, like, the idea is when it's all wired up, it will look something, let's see. Oh gosh, if I can get this thing in here. Is it ever going to light up again? It's got me worried. Okay, touch that side. Touch that side. Okay. So it's a little faint, but at least there's no like hot spot where the glow is coming out. It's like a faint glow on the entire thing. And once we have the other 7 lights in place, it should, complete the effect. I hope. Otherwise, I'm going to be very, very upset. And that's with 6 volts going through this thing. This thing is a very faint LED. Like, these LEDs only take 3 volts to power. So, like, you know, is that even on? Man, it's like 3 volts doesn't even power the thing on anymore. I have to kick it all the way up to 6 volts just to get a response out of it. So that might be something to bear in mind, is that maybe these are not the 3-volt wires that I was counting on. Maybe they are, in fact, 5 volts that were mislabeled or something like that. So here is the next longest one. Yeah, this is the second longest one. And so this one's going to go in like somewhere right here. I'm going to try not to obscure it with the other wires here. Oh, geez. I didn't realize that the glare off of that little button magnet was shining right into the camera, so I apologize. So let's see what we can do here. Try my best to sort of cram these wires to one side. And then we'll take our second LED. And place it like right about there. And then we'll do our dab of resin. Get this guy in there and just kind of tap the light down so that he stays in place where we want him. But the last thing we want is to seal the wooden dowel in there too, so got to keep this part moving. But yeah, I tell you, this light, my big LED is like, or the big UV LED, I should say, is really curing this stuff fast, so that's good. So we've got one light up here at the top. We're gonna have one right here, and then we're gonna put one like right around here. And then after the break here, we've got one that'll go towards the bottom. Okay, that's probably good enough to get that thing cured in place there. Let's see if we can't separate these wires a little bit and test to make sure that both of them are working. And if they both work together, that is an important thing. There we go. That's two lights. We've got a little bit of a glow going. Call Shonuff, because that thing is glowing. That's a terrible joke, and I apologize. But if you've not watched The Last Dragon, then, I don't know what you're doing watching this stream anyway. You should go ahead and log off, go find where The Last Dragon is streaming, and watch one of the finest kung fu movies in the history of cinema. All right, so I think we've cleared out a little bit more space for our next LED. Now let's see, the next longest one is going to be this guy. So let's mount him in here. Thank you, Ultronomus. If you don't know who the meanest and prettiest is, then you got to follow Streamer's Orders and see that movie. Exactly right. Am I the prettiest? Kiss my Converse, sucker. Um, build is going, it's going. Obviously, we've got our challenges in for us. All right, let's get our little proddy stick here and make sure that the LED stays in. Looks like it's doing pretty well so far. And also, so far, looks like the wires are nice and hidden in the back here. Well, I guess you can kind of see that red one there, but like you really can't see the wires there, which is ideal. They're all baked in. So let's get this guy cured up. And then we're going to test the circuit again. I know this part is boring, the fact that I have to keep testing the circuit after every single light install, but like I said, I've been burned way too many times when it comes to this part of the process. And ultimately, at least if this fails, then I can just paint this guy with the UV paint and call it good and just be like, you know what? At least we got something working, right? But if we can get 3 LEDs into each side of this, or well, 4 technically, if you count the one at the base. Okay. Clear out a little space. This is the most, oh, here, let me see. I will actually put that on the, on screen here. I'm intrigued. This is the most in-depth I've seen one of these builds. Usually it's in fast forward or skips around. Yeah. Ultimately, I think I will make a fast forward slash skip around version of it, but I feel like this, helps. Uh, it's the uncensored, honest view of how these things usually go because like I've seen a lot of YouTubers who, they're fantastic at this stuff and they do it in like one go and it's not like nothing goes wrong. And I wish I was that, but I'm not quite there yet. I still make mistakes. And so I think it's important to show when some of those mistakes happen. Um, so let's see. I guess we can test this circuit here. Make sure that these guys are all working together nicely. Let's bunch our negative leads together. Give me that. No, what's going on here? My trackpad is doing something weird here. It's like not okay. There we go. I learned don't buy accessories for a gunplay you don't have on hand. They were gonna buy me, or they were gonna send me a perfect grade. Oof, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's is that the weeb version of don't put all your eggs in one basket? Don't count your don't count your chickens till they've hatched. It's funny how these sayings like that have no meaning to us now because obviously like, you know, we here don't count chickens. At least, no one in my immediate sphere does that I know of. But the knowledge and wisdom still applies. Do not don't buy Gunpla that you don't have yet. There we go. We are getting some light out of these guys. So far so good. Let's install the last one in place here. Okay. So I think by like holding the wires here behind, we can get a pretty good grip on the part. And then we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing where we hit it with a little dab of UV resin. And then where's my little pokey stick? Yeah, let's make sure we poke that LED down so that he's not creeping up near the surface. Like I said, we want to keep the wooden part moving because we don't want to get that sealed in with the light, but yeah, there we go. And then I think that we've got I've been experimenting with this, hollowing out this spot here, because this actually was filled in with some of the resin when I made the copy of the part. So like here is the part that and where it attaches to the Vayeate backpack. I still need to drill the hole in the back a little bit deeper, I think, in order to get it to really stick on there. Um, all right. So let's see here. Got our positive leads, our negative leads. Let's just give this guy a little test here. And then we might call it an evening, just since we've been kind of going. And it's almost, well, it's a little over the 2 hour mark. I'm just going to dim my overhead light here and see if that gives us a little bit of a better look at what we're doing. Okay. I can't believe that none of that solder paste stuck on this. That is real disappointing. I wonder, will my coin battery work? If not, then I might, because at least the coin battery has lots of contact spot on it. It's really hard to get that 6 volt to work. Yeah, see, the 3 volt guy isn't working so hot. This is that lipo battery that I mentioned. So like, this is like a little 3 volt guy, and you would solder it to the points on the board right here and here, and it would get charged from the USB-C. I actually made the mistake when I was cutting this wire. Um, this is actually a dumb thing for me to do. Instead of cutting them individually to strip those wires, I had them together and I cut them at the same time, and I didn't realize that I had the actual nippers were in contact with both of the points at the same time, and so I created a short circuit, and this battery in particular started to smell pretty foul because it was I almost fried it and almost had it explode on me. So, again, reference to Electro Boom. It's one of those do as Hatter says, not as Hatter does. But yeah, Taco, the thing I would recommend is I saw, this was actually one of the more helpful tutorials from there we go. So that's looking pretty good to me. I mean, we've got some pink light coming off. Let's see what it looks like with no overhead light. So there's a little bit of a hot spot, but that's only in the camera. Honestly, like outside of the camera, you really can't see those hot spots quite as badly. So I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. And again, when the lights are off and it looks, kind of like this, I'm going to go back to the tape. I mean, that looks pretty close to what we're doing here. Well, that was weird. Is that really just from the, I guess that's just from the camera. That's kind of interesting. Ow. But anyway, like I was saying, Taco, if you're going to be practicing scribing and panel lining, practice on some plot plate. There was that Ray Studio like I said, it was one of the few Ray Studio videos that wasn't just an ad for their products, but you know, it's like make like a little hanger base or something out of just a plot plate. Practice scribing on that so that you're not doing it on kits. I find that that's a effective use of your time for sure. So maybe we can find another way to help diffuse this if we continue to apply layers of resin and then come back over them and give them a little scuffing. I just hope I'm not sanding the sanding the actual LEDs. It's so I'll keep applying layers of UV resin and scuffing it up with the little sanding sponge here, and that should help diffuse the light a little bit more, because that's the goal here, is we don't want any hot spots. Jeez. That, and of course soldering this thing so that I don't have to hold all these wires all at once. But so far I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. One question. Oh, here we go. One question. What do people use to pin broken parts? Is there a specific product? I'm not sure if I understand the question. So I guess like if you have like a broken joint or something. Well, I can show you what I've done. All right, let's see here. I'll kick the light back on before we sign off for the evening. So this here is a high-grade Zaku. Oh, clearly in peak condition. But I will show you what I've done with him in the past, because, well, clearly this is like a broken tab in his hand. Actually, what's kind of neat about him is the mono eye on this was replaced with a UV light, or UV painted mono eye. So that one I'm pretty proud of. But he also has a very damaged leg here, as you can see, which I have replaced with, so there's a metal pin in there that I also sealed up with UV resin. Now the other thing about it is that like this this guy actually has magnets in his feet. So let me see if I can get this guy to work for us, because that'll be a nice thing to show off. Because the reason that this leg broke is because I have wires running down in the legs for the mono eye controls. So let me see if I can find one of those wires I had hanging around here. Where's a good test wire when you need one? Yeah, all right, here we go. So, judging by the fact that the wire that's hanging out here is black, I can tell that this is the negative side here on the right leg, and then on the left leg we have the positive. So, let's do this. Oh, come on. He lit up there for a second. There we go. So yes, what I would do is, if you were trying to repair a broken part, depending on the context of said broken part, you definitely want to use some kind of metal pin to reinforce the joint. Use a little pin vise like this guy, drill a hole into both sides, and then put like a metal pin in there. And then once you seal it up with a little bit of Mr. Cement, or whatever you choose to use as your plastic cement / thinner, then this guy, like I said, I reinforced with UV resin because I was like, I don't want to have to deal with this thing ever again. So yeah, the mono eye is a fun thing that I enjoy doing, for as many kits as I can make it work for. But and then yeah, this is a neat trick too, is running the positive leads down one foot and the negative leads down another, connecting them to magnets, so that then we can like connect it to an action base and get the power to the mono eye that way. But yeah, any metal pin will work. I guess I'm trying to think of like a good place to harvest pins from. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, because you wouldn't, here's here are the drill bits that came with that pin vise, right? So like something like this is perfect because it's really, really small, like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters thick. And so if one of these breaks on you, then yeah, just use the part that you can't use anymore, and use that as a reinforcing joint. Otherwise, you can use just any kind of small high tensile strength wire. Anything stronger than like garden wire, obviously, because that's not going to do anything for you. But yeah, with that, I am going to, well, move my camera down here. With that, I'm going to sign off for the night, and I'll probably work on this a little more off stream. I really hope to have this thing ready, in time for, there's no like big build events or anything, but the idea is I'm going to have like both the Mercurius and Vayeate together posed, and we'll be controlling them with the app, like I said earlier. It's a fun project with a lot of different components going on with it. And I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go. So yeah, I'll be doing a couple more of these late night streams every week, and continue to progress on this. So I hope you guys will enjoy the ride with me. Until then, I will catch you all later. Have a good night.